I am a full-time working mom of a 6-year-old girl. After battling endometriosis for many years, I wasn't even sure if I could have children. My name is Teresa, and I am a miraculous mama.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Miraculous Mamas podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Joy, and if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. We are a podcast that believes in empowering women through storytelling and education, and we are so glad that you are here. We have an awesome episode for you guys today, but before we hop into that, I have a couple of snidbits to share with you. I know a lot of people are doing IVF or looking to go that route, and some people's insurance covers it. A lot of people don't, and it can be a super expensive thing to invest in. But I've heard from a few of our listeners that if you order the drugs from Europe, it's actually 50% cheaper. I thought that that was very interesting and kind of cool because the pharmaceuticals in the United States are just highly outrageously priced. I know you can get diabetic medication from Canada for like 90% cheaper than here. But yeah, you can order IVF drugs from Europe. I know somebody who actually flew there for the treatments and then somebody who ordered their medications from there. And I thought that that was super interesting. So if that's a route that you and your spouse really want to go, but you haven't been able to afford it or didn't think that it was an option because your insurance doesn't cover it and it's super expensive, maybe do some research and look into that because there might be an option there for you. Also, I am going to be finally starting a video series on trying to conceive and preparing your body for pregnancy. It's been I feel like it's been 5 months for me so far of getting in a healthy headspace, but also preparing physically. I did the hormone testing with Dr. Patrick Flynn, and I found out that I'm at risk for breast cancer. My hormones are off. Found out that I had a parasite in my gut and that I had these food allergies that I wasn't aware of that were kind of making everything harder. It was making my hormones, it was making it harder for them to balance out because there was strain and inflammation in my gut, and the same with the parasite. So it's kind of all interconnected, and so many people think it's, hey, I'm ready to get pregnant now, and we're just going to start trying. But I would encourage you to look into the things that affect your hormones, look into preparing your body and starting to take a good prenatal and supplements and eating the right foods beforehand, because there is just so much that goes into that, not only for you, but for your spouse as well. There's tons of research out there now that shows when men drink a lot while they're trying to conceive, your baby has a 44% chance increase of being born with a congenital heart defect. And if they're smoking, it increases your chances of miscarriage and even heart disease and stuff like that later on in life. So there's tons of research out there, and I feel like we've been misled. We've been told when you're ready to get pregnant, just start having unprotected sex. And that's just really not the case. Even when it comes to birth control, you think you can just get off birth control and get pregnant, but it takes the average woman who has been on birth control 8 to 18 months to get pregnant, depending on why she got on birth control. If she got on just to practice safe sex or just to practice, pregnancy prevention, that's one thing. But if you got on birth control because you were having heavy periods or they were irregular or anything like that, that's covering a symptom up that your body's trying to tell you. So getting off the pill, that's going to come back. And sometimes it takes your body a while to start to ovulate again. So it's not even necessarily 8 to 18 months. It's 8 cycles of actually ovulating and having a normal cycle after birth control. I'm so excited because we're going to be having a couple of episodes in the next month addressing these issues, which I'm super passionate about and I'm really getting into because I just feel like why aren't we being told this information? Why didn't somebody teach us that when you go on and get pregnant, there's steps to take toward it. One of my favorite comparisons is like you wouldn't go out and run a marathon without training. And the same is true for pregnancy. You need to train beforehand. You need to set certain habits in. You need to get your body prepared to provide vital nutrients. There was actually a 70-year-long study happening, I believe it's in Ghana, about this community where babies born in certain seasons are much healthier than babies born in others. And the reason is if they conceive in the rainy season, the mothers are eating a diet of rich leafy green vegetables and getting tons of vital nutrients. And that affects the development of your baby in the first week after conception. It's so crazy. I encourage you to check out the documentary, The 9 Months That Made You. It's so fascinating because it tells you step by step what's happening and what's affecting that. But the babies that were conceived in the dry season, those foods weren't around, and they're born without the ability to fight infections, as well as the babies their mothers were eating dark leafy greens and getting those really good supplements and nutrition. So it's so crazy because it's things that you don't think about. And of course, there's times where you were on birth control forever and you got off and you got pregnant the first month, or you weren't necessarily trying and you got pregnant and you're like, oh crap, I was on vacation, drinking, eating whatever I want. And it's like, but our bodies are also in place to protect that baby and to nourish them. Our bodies, when you conceive, put your baby first. So that's also true of so many people I know. And that's also what this information is for. It's never to look back and feel guilty or ashamed of anything. It's only to take that information and to look forward and to say, okay, are we having another baby? How can I prepare my body? How can I provide the best vessel for my child? What is my partner's role in that? How can he help? Because you think about it, the woman, you give up drinking and hopefully smoking and other habits for 9 months while you're creating this life and while breastfeeding. And men don't have to do any of that, but studies are showing now they do. So it's not that much of a sacrifice to ask your partner to stop drinking and smoking 6 months before you start trying to conceive, because the sperm cycle is 90 days. So, and that even if they do a sperm analysis or get checked and it says, oh, they have enough sperm or whatever, it's not telling you the health of the sperm. It's not telling you the quality of that, which our bodies are super, super smart and don't want to accept the sperm that isn't as healthy. And our bodies reject the ones that are misshaped or have a bad morphology. So our bodies are here to protect us. And so there's so many different things that go into that, but I'm going to be making some videos and sharing with you guys how I've been preparing. I'm going to share with you the tests that I've done, the research that I've learned, how I'm preparing my body for trying to conceive, whether it's doing my hormone tests or getting rid of the chemicals in my house, because so many different chemical things are endocrine blockers and they affect your hormones. They can affect your fertility. There's glyphosates in certain products, which is a horrible pesticide that is found in all of our homes in different ingredients that has an effect on fertility. So I'm going to share some of the information and some steps that I've been taking to try to create a good vessel and a good home to try to conceive. And I'll be sharing some of that journey through a video series with you guys. And I'm super excited about it because I don't share too much of it on here. I've just really tried to focus on getting on great guests for you guys, bringing on experts and bringing on people to share their stories and their journeys. So I haven't been able to share too much of my story and what's been going on with me and my body and the healing process for my hormones and things like that. So I'll be doing that in a video series that I will be starting this week. And I'm telling you to hold myself accountable because I've been saying I'm going to do this for weeks now and I haven't. But I'm super excited to be sharing that with you guys. All right, mamas, if you are a mama, it means that you are basically always busy, always on the go. It even feels like you're on the go if you're at home because there's always a mess to clean up, dinner to cook, a diaper to change, your kid to play with or read a book with, and not to mention the things you have to get done for yourself. Maybe take a shower and brush your teeth, put a bra on or take it off. You're always busy and on the go, but you don't have to sacrifice amazing snacks for you or your kids because you're super busy, which is why I love Perfect Bar and Perfect Kids. They are an amazing snack line of fresh from the fridge protein bars that are made with freshly ground nut butter, up to 17 grams of whole food protein, and 20 superfoods, all combined to create a cookie dough-like texture that is amazing. And for the Perfect Kids, their snack bars crafted especially for your kiddos, 8 kid-friendly superfoods, a bar size just for them, and that same amazing cookie dough-like texture. And your kids are going to love it. All of the snacks are kept in the refrigerator for optimal texture and taste, but they stay fresh up to 1 week outside of the fridge. And they're perfect for on the go whenever you need a snack and to help avoid any meltdowns. And they taste amazing. They're non-GMO, project verified, gluten-free, soy-free, kosher, low GI, and made in the USA. Plus, they have amazing flavors. And I have to tell you, our fridge was stocked with the Perfect Bars and Perfect Kids. And I noticed that a lot of our Perfect Kids snacks were missing. And that's because Vito was eating them. So, I mean, they're for kids and adults, but the perfect ones are supposed to be for adults. The perfect kids are for kids. But I got the kids ones for our nieces and nephews, but Vito's been munching on them. So they are delicious and they are healthy for you, which is such an added bonus. And right now, Perfect Bar is offering you 15% off your online order. So just go to perf.bar/mamas and shop their refrigerated snacks at perf.bar/mamas today to get 15% off your order. Make your day a little more perfect at perf.bar/mamas. Also, today, I have an awesome guest for you. I have Claudia Reuter on, and she is the host of a podcast called The 42%, and she talks about taking time off to raise your kids and returning to work, but in that there is no judgment, whether you're working through it all or whether you take time off or whether you choose to stay home. And there's such a mental battle, no matter your choice, whether you're choosing to be a stay-at-home mom, there's a mental battle. If you're choosing to go back to work, if you love work and you miss it, or you hate work but you have to because you financially need it, there's such a struggle for every mom these days in those situations, but there shouldn't be. Like, we are all doing the best that we can and doing what we have to for our families, or even doing what we want to, because sometimes you love work and that makes you healthier mentally to be a better mom, and that's okay too. So Claudia has so much information for us. She's such an amazing woman. She is a powerhouse, and I cannot wait for her to talk with you. So I'm going to grab her. All right, everyone, I have Claudia Reuter here, and she is an amazing woman. She currently works as the managing director for Techstars, but she also has a podcast helping working moms, kind of just giving them a place to feel heard and grow that community. And she has a lot of other things going on. She's done a lot of different things. She's an awesome businesswoman and a mom, so she's here to kind of talk to us about how her worlds collide. So thank you so much, Claudia, for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so psyched to be here.
Yeah, I would love for you just to kind of tell us, I guess, where you got to where you are today.
Sure. So quick background on where I am today. I currently, professionally, I work at Techstars as a managing director. And what that means is I get to invest in 10 companies a year and help them make their businesses better and help them move along. In my private life, I am really committed to helping basically people hear more stories of what's possible for women, whether you choose to stay home or whether you're choosing to remain in the traditional workforce, whatever your path. I feel like there aren't a lot of stories out there of the different waving career paths that happen. And so my podcast, The 43%, is meant to highlight different stories that people maybe aren't hearing about what success can look like. And obviously it means different things to different people. So I've been interviewing people ranging from women who are CEOs and lawyers to doctors, authors, people who are actually staying at home, people who are teachers. So really just a really wide view. And it's been an awesome experience so far, and I'm really enjoying it. And I'm also working on a book that's due out in just a few months that's going to be published with Wiley, and will be part of the Techstars series. And it's called Yes, You Can Do This, How Women Start Up, Scale Up, and Build the Life They Want. And it's really part manifesto to encourage women to start their own businesses, and part because I feel like when we talk a lot about how do we get more women in positions of leadership. And I think one path to get there is starting your own company. You're automatically in a leadership position, and it's a way to think about different ways to structure things differently and change the rules. And the book also contains a how-to guide for if that's a path you go on, how do you do it? I'm also married, and I have 2 teenage boys who are 16 and 14, and I love them to death. And I have a really cool rescue dog named Nora.
Awesome. That's so cool. Yeah, you're doing so much. So I would love for you to kind of share your story, because you took a break from the work fields, the workforce, and it kind of gave you a different perspective on it entering back in.
Yeah. So I am 40. Actually, I just turned 44. I had my first child, who's now 16, when I was 27. And I was the first one of my friends to have a kid. And I remember, or one of the first, and I didn't really have a lot of, ideas on what I should or shouldn't be doing. I was working for an investment bank in the technology division at that point, doing things like sysadmin work, just like it was truly a technical job. And I kind of had it in my head like, oh, this will be pretty easy. I'll have the baby, and then I'll take my maternity leave, which I knew I was lucky to have, and I'll go back to work and I'll figure it out. And as my pregnancy progressed, I was getting, I was one of those people, like I threw up all the time. Like a lot of people do. And, there was nothing that was particularly easy about the whole experience. And when I went on maternity leave, it kind of just reality just sort of sunk in. And I realized that any daycare or childcare situation that I was going to be able to find was going to either add an hour to my commute on either direction. At that point in my life and career, it was going to eat up a pretty big percentage of my take-home pay. And frankly, emotionally, I just didn't feel ready to go back. By 3 months in, I was just starting to feel normal again. I had like a massive episiotomy, so I couldn't sit down for a while, which is weird. And and I just wanted to have that time with my kids. And so I just kind of left out of the workforce and figured I would figure it out later, but not right then. And I should say, like, it wasn't as if I was in this luxurious position. I was living my husband and I were in a 4th floor walk up in New York at this point, and we were okay with just trying to make it work. Because it was something that we just wanted to do in our family. And so I stayed out for a while. I had my next son 23 months later, and, did all sorts of things in the community, like volunteered for a board at a library. We renovated a house, did all sorts of stuff. But it was a few years in, I started to feel like maybe I knew at some point I needed to go back to work to make money. And I wanted to do something beyond just the family, even though that was really critical to me, and it still is at that point. So long story short, I was looking at a whole bunch of different things and realized that I thought I had a good path to actually start my own company. So I started a company, and through lots and lots of iterations and work on it, was fortunate enough to raise some capital and to grow the business. And then we were acquired in 2014 by another company. And then I went on to lead their digital services and innovation team for a few years. And then I joined Techstars.
Wow. Yeah, that's so crazy. All right. So you guys know that I took a hormone test and a food allergy test. And since I took the food allergy test, I have been feeling so much better. And even I was breaking out on my cheeks for years. That started to go away. And Vito started to notice just the difference that I was feeling in cutting out these foods that were affecting me. So he decided that he wanted to take a food allergy test. And so we ordered one from Everlywell. And Everlywell offers more than 30 at-home lab tests, from food sensitivity to thyroid to STD and heart health tests. Each Everlywell collection kit comes with super easy to follow instructions, and you collect your sample from home on your own time. We actually did it while we were watching a movie the other night. Vito pricked his finger, and it wasn't painful. It's only a little prick, and you put a couple drops of blood on a sample and send it into them. And once you send your sample pack in, it's processed in a certified lab, and your results are reviewed by a board-certified physician, and then they're sent directly to you digitally within just days. And you can even share them with your healthcare provider to get more details on how that information can help you. The Everlywell digital platform helps break down exactly what the results mean for you. Plus, you can also set up a free discussion with a healthcare professional directly through the Everlywell platform. So to start learning more about your health, like we did, check out Everlywell at-home lab tests today. For 15% off an Everlywell at-home lab test, visit everlywell.com/miraculous and enter code miraculous. That's everlywell.com/miraculous, code miraculous for 15% off your test. Everlywell at-home lab test, your answers, your way. So how did you feel, I guess, like when you did take that break? How did you know when you were ready to go back in?
I don't think there was a real moment that I thought, okay, today I'm putting on my suit and putting my resume together, as much as there was sort of a slow burn on it. You know, as the kids were just getting a little bit more and more independent, and I started to feel like I knew there were other things I wanted to do. I just started to explore different things. And frankly, I remember looking at I would look kind of obsessively at what are jobs out there? Am I actually qualified for anything anymore? Because I do think when you step away, I mean, at least I did, and I know a lot of other women who feel the same way. There's sometimes a confidence gap that happens where it's like, there's this weird thing where you're stepping away because you're taking care of little kids, which is I think is so important and so difficult, and requires you to have a lot of, your wits about you. And yet it's not something that we kind of advertise as a skill set going back into the workforce. Instead, we're all kind of forced to talk about our gap years, and as if you were in, on a vacation. Right. For a month. And so, I didn't feel really confident about what was out there. A lot of what was out there wasn't going to necessarily work with my life at that point anyway. And so I started realizing, like, if I could start my own company, I could still control my day, at least for a while. And so worked on a business plan. My husband is also in software development, so he jumped in to help me in his part-time, and just started taking baby steps along the way, and getting a site up there, going to conferences, trying to figure out where the market opportunity was, until eventually it just kind of felt like a third child that just kind of took on a life of its own at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now with, you kind of started the podcast, the 43%, as a passion project because of your experience and talking with other mothers. So I'd love for you to tell us kind of what 43% even means, what it is, and what you're doing with your podcast.
Sure. So there's a stat out there that approximately 43% of women do step away from the workforce at some point to care for kids. And I think that number is going to change over time. Obviously, men are taking on that role as well, in ways that maybe they didn't used to. But predominantly, it's women still. And so 43% step out. I had been to a number of industry events over the years where you get to hear fireside chats where someone will interview someone who's been super successful and they'll talk about their path. And I remember being at one of these events last year and thinking, you really can't hear these unless you're in a big city or in a community where these events are happening. And so often I feel like women who have either, whether you've stepped away or not stepped away, there's sort of a stigma around talking about your family at work. It's sort of like people feel like they need to compartmentalize it. People often don't want to talk about how challenging logistics can be for pickup and drop off. All just the things that are little, but they actually make the day pretty challenging. So I thought if I could I know so many amazing women, and I felt like if I could just do fireside chats with them, people would hear that it's not just women in tech, or it's not just women in a particular industry, that we all have the same challenges, whether you're working or staying at home to work, right? And, just start to hear different experiences that are out there. So I started just doing some recordings with people last November, I want to say, about it just a little under a year ago, and was really fortunate to connect with a producer, Amy Westervelt, who understood what I was trying to get at and took it on to produce it. And now, she's had an amazing journey of her own. And now I'm working with Wonder Media, who's producing our second season right now.
Yeah. So how I found out about Claudia was I was at a podcast convention and I met a couple of the women who work for Wonder Media, and they were talking about the company. And then they started talking about the 43% podcast. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta figure out how to get this lady on. So I ended up getting one of their cards and reached out, because I just think that that's so cool. Cause like you said, I mean, you go to these conferences, or you go to a place where you can have these fireside chats, and that's where you get inspiration. That's where you're like, oh my gosh, these other people are doing it. Or, oh my gosh, this woman's so inspiring. She did this, this, and this, and she had kids and she did this. And I'm feeling like I have to make a choice, or that, like you said, I have to why can't I say the word right now?
Compartmentalize.
I lost it. Like my life, so it's when you get into those settings that you get that inspiration, and you have you can develop, it's more of an intimate setting, and you can develop deeper connections with these people and leave feeling empowered. So to turn that into what you're doing is so cool.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've been so blown away too by people's willingness to hop on and tell the story, because so often, and people share what's great, what's not, what's been hard, what's working, what's not, and it's been really interesting to hear that the challenges are the same, whether you're at the C-suite or whether you're earlier in your career at a totally different place. People are challenged around what to do when worlds collide and you're in a meeting and, you get an emergency call, or, and the emotional journey that happens, I think it's easy to be like, we kind of think of ourselves as so much like these just material beings and, just mechanical, like, okay, we had the baby. Now you put the baby here. Now you go back to your job. And there's so much more like emotion involved and, than I think we acknowledge.
Yeah. I don't know why this time of year I seem to get senioritis. It's like the year's almost over. You've done so much already. I don't want to get things done as much. It's cold outside. You want to be cozy. I literally haven't grocery shopped in over a week, which isn't like me, but I have senioritis. But that's where HelloFresh comes into handy, and I love them because they are America's #1 meal kit. And they are easy. They have amazing seasonal recipes and pre-measured ingredients that are delivered right to your door. They make cooking delicious meals at home a reality regardless of your comfort in the kitchen. They have step-by-step recipes and all the pre-measured ingredients, and you'll have everything you need to get a wow-worthy dinner. Vito always knows when I make a HelloFresh meal because it's something I haven't made before. I tend to repeat a lot of the same things. He'll be like, oh my gosh, babe, this is really good. What a great recipe. And I'm like, thanks. It's HelloFresh. But you get a break out of your dinner rut because they have 20 plus seasonal, newly curated recipes each week. And there's something for everyone, from family recipes to calorie smart and vegetarian, and a fun menu series like the Hall of Fame and craft burgers. They have more 5-star recipes than any other meal kit, so you know that you're going to get something delicious. And they're flexible. You can add extra meals to your weekly order, and add yummy add-ons like garlic bread and cookie dough. And it's easy to change your delivery days, food preferences, and skip a week whenever you need. It's the perfect thing that helps me cook at home when I don't want to go outside and I have my senioritis and I want to try something new. They are to my rescue. And right now, we have an amazing offer for you guys. For a limited time only, you get 9 free meals with HelloFresh. So go to HelloFresh.com/miraculousmamas9 and enter miraculousmamas9. That's the number 9. So go to HelloFresh.com/miraculousmamas9 and enter miraculousmamas9 for 9 free meals with HelloFresh. You know, you were saying that a lot of the people that come on, even though they have completely different stories, there's still so many of the same struggles. So I would love to kind of talk about those. Like, what are, for the moms who are listening that are working moms and they're like, yes, like we're listening to this woman, or somebody who is at home and they're like, I want to join the workforce again. I know we had talked before, like guilt is just kind of huge in kind of all arenas of wanting to go back to work, feeling guilty about that, or wanting to stay home, or needing to go back to work. And like there's so many similar struggles. And for the women listening, I would love to just kind of dive into a few of those.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I've heard so many different kind of things that people touch on, you know, and I think it's easy. Sometimes people think, oh, if someone decided to be a stay-at-home mom, it must mean that they're incredibly privileged and that they're just, you know, they have so much disposable income, they don't know what to do. That it's sort of like a stereotype that's out there. And in many cases, that's not true. In many cases, people are stepping away because childcare simply isn't affordable for them. And somehow they're like, it's better to cobble things together from what they have to try to make it work. Only 17% of companies actually offer maternity leave. So tons of people, even working at good companies, are cobbling together a way to just heal from a pretty major physical event, you know, through sick days, vacation days. You know, it's not a glamorous vacation, right? So there's, you know, some real just financial challenges that people have to try to figure out how to make it work. But even for people who are more, you know, who are further along in their career, and maybe the financial part isn't the biggest piece of it, there's the emotional piece and the guilt that comes with it. I interviewed one woman who was kind enough to share, you know, her experiences, and, you know, she's very successful, an Ivy League educated businesswoman. And she talked about how she and her husband, neither one felt that they were going to become stay-at-home parents, but then her husband lost his job. And so then she had to be the one regardless. And, you know, she talked about how she was fine with doing that, and yet at the same time cried every day leaving daycare. Mm-hmm. And it's just, you know, or I talked to another woman who she had been a partner at a law firm, and just from a scheduling perspective, couldn't make that work because at a certain point, because she had 3 kids, but her youngest has autism, and the special needs and care that he required is not something that's readily available through traditional systems. So she ended up starting her own practice that gave her more flexibility to be able to, you know, carve out the schedule she wanted to, and still provide the care that she wanted to be able to provide to her son. You know, a theme I'm hearing over and over is that women are dealing with structures, in my mind, that were not designed with any of this in mind. You know, like the traditional corporate structure that's there was really designed with, you know, if it was designed with families at all, it was designed with the idea that there's one person who's the primary breadwinner, and then there's a supplemental earner or a stay-at-home mom earner, or, you know, who's at home with the family. And so that's why the school day doesn't match the work day. Summer vacation doesn't match the business day. And so I feel like everyone that I talk to is trying to do things that are meaningful for them and their professional experience and the education that they've had. And yet at the same time, we're struggling with these structures or just being creative to find ways to work around the structures that weren't really designed with any of this in mind.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that totally makes sense. And I've heard some similar stories of women just like trying to find that balance. And I guess that's another word that you hear a lot, right? When you're talking to working moms, it's balance. Like, how do you balance it all? And I find that that's a question that does come up a lot. And it's weird though, because you wouldn't ask that to a working dad.
Yes, totally.
You know,
that's it's one of the things that comes up a lot. For some reason, the trend or the pattern is that if a guy has a family and is working, he's perceived as more responsible. And if a woman is working with kids, there's still this motherhood penalty where she's perceived as less reliable. And will often, be asked, oh, is this okay? Will you be able to handle this? Will you be able to manage this? And it sets us up for this like lean in, lean out debate versus getting to the root of what we're trying to do. That's one of the things. So the book I've been working on, that's the topic I'm trying to dig a little deeper into. It's that I feel like there's a bit of a false dichotomy out there. This idea that, we can lean into the structures that exist today and try to make them better, or we can lean out and stay home with our kids. And we kind of set people up for this debate. And I'm like, we're debating based on a whole system that was not designed for us. So what if we did get more women into entrepreneurship and redefine what the workday looks like? We have all these startups that, have dogs in the office, have work at home policies. Like there's been no better time to rethink a lot of things as you're thinking of a new business idea, in my mind.
Yeah. Well, you hear that a lot though, that there is kind of this rise up of women entrepreneurs and mothers who are wanting to create something for themselves and for future people, and starting those companies of being supportive because you understand the lifestyle. You understand that somebody's kid might get sick. You understand, that somebody might be breastfeeding or whatever it is, or what maternity leave is like, or what you hoped it could have been like for you. So you have the chance to actually make that difference in your company and be creative to find ways that, if that person's on maternity leave, that there's not a gap in your company, but you can still bring them back in seamlessly.
Completely. Like I was interviewing one woman, Erica Hogue, a few months ago, who started a consulting company now focused on helping companies think about how to have companies that already exist, how do they have better policies for working parents? And one of the things she mentioned, she was an early employee at Twitter, and she and some of the other folks started a resource group to help new parents. And one of the things they identified was this need, if you were breastfeeding and in sales, you were traveling and your baby might be back at home. So they were working on things like, how do you freeze breast milk to ship it? Like just logistical stuff that nobody's talking about or thinking about. So it's really interesting to hear people trying to solve those problems. And there's a comedy in all of this too, right? Like I was talking to Leslie Ford, she's an executive focused on product management. And she talked about traveling to China for work and thinking she had everything together. And then she had the wrong adapter for China to plug in her breast pump. And she the whole thing exploded. So it's like,
oh my gosh.
These crazy things that just happen as part of being a parent. But having corporations, I think, recognize that if we want to keep women engaged and we don't want to have a high attrition rate, we have to think about ways to look at everyone as the whole person. And there's been a lot of progress made, I think, in terms of, there's more opportunities at a lot of companies to work remote. But also getting people out of the mindset that working remote means you're working part-time or that you're somehow not contributing as much. I think we have the right technology now where it's more helping people realize that maybe you can't do a meeting at 3:00 because that's when the bus comes and the babysitter arrives or whatever the craziness that's happening is. But maybe you can do plenty of work at 11:00 at night. That idea of having real flexibility and more autonomy in your day versus that factory mindset of like, we all must sit at our desks from 9 to 5. I really hope that we move to a more outcomes-based world where people are focused more on what did you produce? What are you making? How valuable is it versus how much seat time did you have today?
Yeah, that's something I've never really understood with some job stuff. It's like, okay, did you get your work done for the day? Then why are you here for an extra 5 hours? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I've never understood, like, okay, here's the goal. Here's what we need to get done. And if you can get that done by this time, awesome.
Right.
Like, that's how my mind's always worked.
I was talking about this the other day with someone and he was like, to your point, he's like, why are we being punished for doing a good job? Like,
right.
But I think of course there are some jobs where the seat time matters, right? Like if you're going to be working at an ice cream shop and you need someone there to scoop the ice cream for 5 hours or 8 hours at a time, then okay, that requires you to be in person doing that job. But for a lot of the work that we all do now, whether it's coding or writing or even working on strategy, a lot of that has a lot more flexibility on how we work. And certainly if you're working with people in different time zones, that creates a whole other set of opportunities to think through what the traditional workday looks like.
Yeah. Is there tons of women in the tech industry?
There are not. There are a growing number. I mean, tech is one of those industries I've become very used to over the years being one of the few women in the room. But I think it's growing. There's a lot of people advocating for more women in tech. But certainly the majority of people, if you were to go to a tech conference or go to a tech event, the majority of people are men, and same for the venture community, doing investments. It's still predominantly a guy's game, but more women are coming in for sure. Yeah.
What do you say, I guess, to the people? 'Cause there are a lot of women that I know who had to return back to work. Either they wanted to or they just needed to monetarily, but the place where they worked didn't offer like one woman I know, she was exclusively breast pumping and she would get a small window of time to pump a couple times throughout the day, but the room was like a 7-minute walk. And by the time she got there, she would have only a couple of minutes to pump and then have to go clean the equipment, go back to her desk. And she had brought it up and it just seemed like nobody was listening and nobody was caring. And then she kind of had to grieve being able to breastfeed her child because her milk supply wasn't keeping up as much because it just became a huge stressful thing for her. And then she wasn't ready to give it up, but kind of was forced to because of her job.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. I mean, I actually didn't end up breastfeeding because I had a really hard time with it. And, so I don't personally have that experience, but I know, companies more and more are putting the nursing room in there so that you can do that, but it kind of counterproductive if you're putting it in and then not letting people access it. If that were me, I'd have a really deep private conversation with HR to figure out a better plan on how I could be supported. And frankly, if that's, that's an example of like, if a company is saying they're supporting people, they should really be supporting them. It shouldn't be, you have 1 minute to figure this out. Because as we all know, like everyone likes to think that breastfeeding is just this super easy, natural thing. And for some people, it's not. Like, that's why I had a really, really hard, lots of tears, lots of like, thinking again that this was just going to be this really easy, natural thing for me, and nothing about it worked at all. It was just like literally a disaster. I don't know how else to describe it. And finally I was like, well, we're all going to starve and options. But this is like hard stuff because we're all told this is the right thing to do. And then to have the added pressure of thinking, if you're already struggling with it or you need more time, and then you've got like your boss's voice in your head trying to rush you through out the door. I don't know how I would probably just have started crying, to be honest. So,
well, I think that the hard thing too is like people in that situation, like women who do get a go pump throughout their job, they still have to deal with remarks from other people of like, oh, it must be nice to get to take 10-minute breaks throughout the day whenever you want, and just kind of dealing with maybe the people who don't get it. And all of that kind of emotionally adds up.
Totally. I remember when I was pregnant at my first job, this was 16 years ago. So it was kind of a big deal that they had done this, and it was pretty progressive. They had put in like a chair in the women's bathroom and was like, there's the nursing room.
Right.
I just remember being like, I don't want to hang out here and do this. But to your point, yeah. And at that point I worked with all guys. And I was working in tech, and I was doing, technical support type stuff. And yeah, that would have been really uncomfortable, I think. And maybe that was on me, that I was feeling uncomfortable. It's not as if someone was overtly doing anything, but I think just, it's kind of like when you have to like get up and go use the bathroom because you have to change like your feminine stuff for your period. Like you're just like, God, I don't really want to do this. I don't want to have to bring my purse into the bathroom when I'm in a meeting. Like, and that's because that's weird. But it's just like the joys of being a woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it is for sure. I hope that, I do think there are a lot of shifts, and I do think that we still have a long way to come, because there is, I think from a men's perspective, they understand like, okay, this person just had this baby, but then they get 3 months off and then they get to come back without missing anything when I've been here the whole time.
Yes. And I think it goes back to people not understanding what that maternity leave actually looks like. And this is the other thing I've noticed too, is that I've interviewed so many people over the years, right? And I'll interview a guy who maybe, it took some time off because he had a financial win, or I perceive that that's what happened. And he'll be like, oh yeah, I was just in the islands for 3 months. And I think, oh my gosh, this person is so successful, right? Like he's so confident, and like he'll be able to come in here and just start crushing it. And I'll find a woman who is like, oh, I'm so sorry. I've been at home with the kids. I haven't been up to like, and they're apologizing and feeling bad. And we're kind of filling in the blanks that, that somehow wasn't as valuable as someone just going on vacation, which is really weird, because I think the months you have on maternity leave it's really like a medical leave. I mean, for a lot of course, there's some women who it's just super easy, and you have this baby and everyone sleeps and everything's great. But for a lot of people, there's postpartum depression, there's unplanned cesareans, there's deliveries that go wrong, there's babies that need care that you weren't expecting needed care. There's people who don't sleep. And those 3 months are just, especially for the first one, it's so life-changing, and it's beautiful, and it's all the wonderful things you hope, but it's also exhausting. It's not easy from a physical perspective. I mean, I was sharing earlier, like I had an episiotomy, and that sounds like, oh, well, that's just a thing. But it's like for several weeks, I was walking around with like an inflatable donut, and you can't sit down unless you're sitting on the donut because you have so many stitches. It's not like the worst thing in the world, but it's not this like, oh, I got to take a break from work and hang out at home and watch TV for 3 months. Like I got to stay at home and bond with this person who just a few weeks ago was literally inside. Now they're outside, and you're trying to get to know this new person and what they need. You're sleep deprived, and it's something I feel like we should actually be looking at and going, wow, that was really impressive that you did that in the last 3 months. Welcome back. Thanks for contributing to society, versus, oh, how come I don't get the maternity leave break that you just got?
Right. Yeah. What would you say to, I guess, women who have taken a break from work, whether it was just maternity leave, or maybe they took a few years off to be at home and are entering back, and they kind of do feel apologetic about that gap, or they want to explain, like, how do you feel confident going into an interview when you've taken years off work and you're coming back, but you are fully qualified and fully capable? And how do you turn that gap into, I guess, your strength?
I think I try to talk to women about thinking about the things that they've done as a mom that are actually the same things that great managers do. So like if you really are focused on your family in a positive way as a stay-at-home mom, most people who are trying their best are really good at conflict negotiation. They've dealt with plenty of, tantrums and people, if you have more than one kids, people debating what should or shouldn't be happening. And if you're really at it as a mom, you are becoming better and better and better at conflict management. You're able to deal with, we talk about, moms are great multitaskers. I like to think of it more as moms are great at having to deal with a variety of different challenges in any given moment. And so, they're equipped you develop skills to remain calm while you're working with a really young human. And maybe there's, anything could happen, right, in a day as a mom. Like someone might eat soap, someone might accidentally, pull the fire alarm, like anything can really happen. And that prepares you in a lot of ways for crises that can happen at work. It doesn't mean that it's the same situation, but no situation is ever the same. But if you have your wits about you and you're focused on, what is best for my kids, that same mindset of how am I helping these people on their journey so that they're learning to talk, they're learning to walk, they're doing all the things that will make them full people. If you have that same mindset around your teammates and your team members, you're going to have a team that does amazing things. You're not obviously worried about baby things with them, but you're thinking about how can I make sure these people feel empowered? How are they remaining curious? How are they going to, want to continue on their career journey? When you're in that mindset of helping people grow and develop, you're an amazing manager. So I try to remind people, like, what you do as a mom, if you think about it at a strategic level, it really translates really, really well to management.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. What would you say, I guess, to women who might have a business idea or they're trying to start out on their own? Any, I guess, advice for wanting to join that, the female entrepreneurial people who are just making it on their own and setting new standards?
I would say definitely look in your local area for, a network. Network with other people who are thinking about entrepreneurship, even if it's not in your space. It's a lonely journey, so it's helpful to find other people. And a lot of, certainly in big cities, but in a lot of communities now, you'll find more and more events that crop up and ways to get involved. And then there's a whole bunch of steps that people can start to do to really flesh out what is their business idea. Is this something that I just want to set up as a small consulting business or a small independent company and maybe, build or offer a one-time service? Or am I really trying to build, a huge scalable organization that's going to grow over time? And depending on the type of business that you're going to build, you'll need different sets of resources. But wherever you're starting, the first questions are always the same. Like, who is my customer? What exactly am I making and why? Who's my competition? So I think getting to the right network in your community, going online and looking for different online forums. There's a whole bunch out there right now that I can send you links to after the call if you want, that are meant to help people navigate all of these things. But really just thinking through, am I solving a real problem? I kind of like to remind people, like, if you're either making a vitamin or a painkiller, right? Like, so if you have a vitamin, it better be amazing because people will just take it for fun or buy your product for fun. And if you have a painkiller, you're making something that is hitting a real pain point, is something people need. And that's usually where people are also willing to spend money.
That's so interesting. You used a word in there, like finding out who your competition is. So how, as women, do we not see each other as competitors, especially in this field of wanting to, root for each other because there's enough against us right now. And especially moms wanting to enter it. And, so how do we, I guess, uplift each other and not, we could be competitors, but we could still be rooting for each other.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, I think there's the idea of if you're starting your own business, you do need to be aware of what else is already out there. Are there already big companies doing what you're doing? So that's what I meant by competitors. But I know what you're saying. Like sometimes as women, it's easy to feel like there's a competitive nature among all of us. Like, oh, well, I need to keep my idea. But what I like to remind people is like, there's more than enough for everyone. If you just look in nature, you can see there's more than enough. And so I like to remind people, like, for all intents and purposes, if you find a tribe of other women, try to remember, like, you can all, there are ways that everyone can help other people. Assume good intent. Assume that if you're talking to someone, they don't have bad intent. Assume that I know, like, we kind of tell people, oh, be wary of strangers and all this kind of stuff. I try to remind people, like, that's actually kind of, it sets you up for a kind of a narrow life when you do that. Like, I like to remind people, like, for the most part, people are really good and have good intentions. So spend time focusing on that, and you'll find yourself gravitating to really amazing people.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And I mean, I look at the podcast arena, for example, and I interview tons of other podcasters, and I've never felt like, oh, well, you have a podcast, so you can't come on mine, because what if my listeners like go to yours? Like it's like you're going to attract the people who are getting fed from what you're putting out there, from your content. And I bring on people who are doing cool work. So it's like, yeah, go listen to the 43%. And if you're, especially a mom who's entering back into that field, you're going to find tons of information and a lot of women who have gone before you, and it'll be very relatable if that's the season of your life that you're in.
Yeah, totally. I'd love to have you on my podcast.
Oh, that'd be fun. That would be so much fun. But yeah, I mean, what you're doing is awesome. And you guys definitely should check out the 43%. And I found that it was super interesting. I didn't know that 17% of companies do not offer maternity leave. Like, how do we make that change?
Well, it's funny because because I'm working on this book, I've been doing all this research on it. And then when you start to do the research, it makes you crazy because you think about it. It's like 1920, women got the right to vote, but we didn't get the right to even open our own credit cards without a male signature until 1975. So it took that much time
years,
to just exactly. And so this whole idea of maternity leave has only been something that's really been debated and talked about in the last 30 years, I think. And, there was progress made because everyone knows there's the Family Medical Leave Act, but really what that's saying is that you're not going to get fired. So you're not going to lose your job, but it doesn't mean the company has to pay you. But keep in mind too, it wasn't that long ago until 1965 with the Civil Rights Act. It wasn't that long ago that actually it was even later than that. I think it was the late 70s, like 78, where they couldn't make pregnancy an issue in the hiring process. Like it really wasn't in my lifetime. It was totally fine for an employer at one point to say, oh, you're pregnant, so yeah, we won't hire you. So it used to just be seen as this liability, like go home and take care of the kids or find another job. And so companies just, I think people just keep doing whatever the status quo is until enough people bring it up as an issue. And it was a big breakthrough to be at the point where companies weren't going to fire you or hire you with pregnancy in mind. And now I think people are starting to realize, well, wait a minute, if we want to keep good employees, this shouldn't be something that is seen as a penalty for women to be able to take this time to bond with their new baby. And frankly, for husbands too. I mean, for paternity leave, I think is really important. And it's really just on the cusp of being talked about. But imagine if we were in a situation where husbands could also take, 3 months off, and you'd have the first 6 months with 2 caregivers at home or something. But yeah, only 17% do right now. And I think until enough people really challenge that or people make decisions on where they're going to work based on that, I don't think we'll see a change until enough people start raising it as an issue.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because so many other countries have these systems in place and it works great.
Well, it was funny. I was actually talking to someone who heads up HR for a company in Ireland, and she was saying how they have guaranteed 6 months off. but they still have a nutrition issue where women don't come back in easily. And she tied it to flexibility. She said, the maternity leave is one thing, and then it becomes the flexibility. She said, and a lot of times women will say, oh, well, what if I just go to a 4-day work week instead and I'll take Friday off? And she's like, well, that doesn't solve your problem if someone throws up at daycare on Tuesday. And when you really, really drill into it, what people want is flexibility to know they're not going to lose their job if they're also being a responsible parent. And that's sort of what we need to get everyone to talk about, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't remember where I was watching this. I think it was like on a show, but they were talking to the mom about that, like how she had missed out on certain things because like her child had thrown up and then like her whole family was sick. And it's like, man, like normally when your kid throws up at daycare, for some reason, it's the mom who goes and gets them, usually not the dad. And then they're the one who's getting penalized for, hey, you already took a day off work or whatever it is. And it's like, if you're trying to be a responsible, good parent, like where's the line? Like there's not a line, but like how do you make it all work? It's so crazy.
And especially like those first few years, like so many kids, like in kids, like I feel like they're just like little germ factories until like second grade. Like I think I was the sickest I've ever been when my kids were toddlers because I was like, what is this?
What'd you bring home?
Exactly. Yeah. I had there were so many weird things at that age. And so like now I try to be understanding of other women I work with who are at that stage of life. I remember it. And if they are here working and they've got kids, and it's hard, right? But I try to just remember, like, I know what that stage is like. I know they're being responsible and, they'll log back in later. It'll be fine. But a lot of people don't think that way. So we just need more people to do that.
Yes. Which is why we need more women in leadership.
There you go.
Yes. And to root for each other. So if people want to follow what you're doing, where can they find out more information on you?
Sure. So we've got a website called the43percent.com. It's THE43PERCENT.com. And I also have a website, ClaudiaReuter.com, which I don't update nearly as often as I should. It's kind of stale. But the 43% is pretty updated. And then, of course, we're on everywhere you get podcasts.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Claudia, for coming on and sharing with us. And I don't know, even just like inspiring, I guess, women to feel more confident to get back out there if that's the route that they're choosing to go, and to even push for more leadership positions. Don't feel like because you took a couple years off, you have to go back at the entry level if you've had experience on a different one. Like go back and for the role that you deserve, the job that you deserve. And because you have been managing a family. Yes. If you wanted to pay someone to do it, you'd have to pay them a lot of money. Exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I love Claudia and the work that she is doing. In the intro, I said 42%. I stand corrected. It is 43%. So make sure that you check her out. It's an amazing podcast for working moms and anybody who's considering going back to work or even balancing your stay-at-home life. The work that she's doing is awesome. And I'm so grateful that she agreed to come on the podcast. So if you guys are not following Miraculous Mamas on Instagram or Twitter, you probably should, because I'm still learning how to tweet and I need your help. So I'll be posting episodes up there. If you guys can retweet them out for me, that'd be so helpful. Follow us on the Miraculous Mamas Instagram, where I always post quotes from our guests, information about them, and just little tidbits in the stories, information that I find throughout Instagram. And then join our Miraculous Mamas community on Facebook. The women there are awesome, and I am just so incredibly grateful for them, their support, their love, their time and energy that they invest into it is is really amazing. And if you're listening to this podcast and you are not subscribed, hit that subscription button so that you can stay up to date on all of the podcast releases every Monday when they come out. And share this podcast with somebody who you know needs to hear it, or somebody you think would enjoy it. If you're loving what you're hearing, give us a rating or a review. We would love your feedback. And I just appreciate you so much and love you guys so much. And I am so excited for the next couple months of guests. There's just continually amazing people coming on the podcast and giving us free education. These are experts in fields that are bringing information to us for free, and they are just awesome. And I'm so grateful for them for taking time out of their busy schedules to connect with us, answer our questions, and help us learn and grow. But I love you guys, and I will talk to you next week.
This podcast is brought to you by Wave Podcast Network. Check out all of our shows, including the Brain Candy Podcast, I Don't Get It, Coffee Convos, and Let's Talk About It.